birthday and it ends. It's a little whatever, but my year ends Art Basel. Like after Art Basel, I'm done. Like I don't have anything left in me. I don't got no more. I don't want to create nothing. I don't want to do nothing. Like I'm done. It's the holidays. It's supposed to be cold, whatever. So like that window of time between Art Basel and my birthday, I'm kind of just like, I don't feel obligated to do all of these things. But at the same time, like that is for me, because it's the days before my birthday, it's a very reflective time. My birthday's, I get lit, yes, but also my birthday is very reflective where I'm just like, hey, who do I want to be at 34? Who do I want to be at 30? Who do I want to be at 33? Whatever. But overall, like if my birthday was in April or March, that's how I would apply it. Like that 30 days before your birthday should be,
it would be the same concept.
Yeah. And so for me, I think going into, repeated behaviors, I'm gonna speak for myself. Like I think with repeated behaviors, I just think of the idea of like, how do I, the first question is, how do I make this year different than last year? But also, how do I make January different from December? Like life is continuing. Like it's not this big. I don't always think about things in the bigger picture. So what do you think about that?
And then time, well, I also think time is shorter than I think it is. So then there's that aspect of it too, as well, which is kind of why my mindset is like, I'm just going to do it now. And, figure it out as I go. Like we decided to do this last week. Like,
no.
I know, like put me
Friday.
on
I think it was
13.
Yeah. And it's crazy because to clear it up, I hit you up about this, I think on Saturday, and we just so happened to be messaging each other already. And I was like, hey, what you doing Wednesday, bro? You trying to hop on the show? Yeah, all right, cool. And so
you made a decision very quickly that day.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of already knew what I was going to talk about with you because, it's kind of one of those things. Like I'm trying to be always ready. So I already knew where I want to go with you.
I made my decision quickly that day.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, and you didn't even have the fact you didn't even, most people that I asked about this, they're like, what are we talking about? And I'm like, oh, you need that like written out. Like you were just like, yeah, all right, cool. So
we've talked too many times for me to even, it could have literally been anything, and it has been all night. Yeah.
So let's go into the meat and potatoes of this evening, right? We're just about at the 90-minute mark. I want to make sure I can be respectful of your time.
It's 10 o'clock.
Woo! I know. I don't
Come on now.
trying to make sure this little bit of tint in my eyes is not my eyes actually being red.
Right. This is the last thing people are doing before they go to bed.
Exactly. To your question earlier. So first and foremost, for my viewers, for the sake of this conversation, talk to us in brief about Living in Truth Counseling, and what your mission is with that, and what you've established so far.
Well, I guess I'll start with the name. LIT stands for Living in Truth. It's about being free, without fear of judgment, to be who you are, yourself, authentically, genuinely, unapologetically. For me, it's about empowering other people to experience that, because I've had that experience myself. That's how LIT came to be what it is. And it was very intentional that the acronym is LIT. That I think at the time, it might have been at the time, because this was in like 2020, I want to say.
Yeah.
Lit was a big word. Like it was a thing to say. Like, it's lit, I'm lit. Like, what does that mean? And I'm thinking, I'm like, all these new words that, like, what happened to things are just cool. Like, all right. So I wanted to make it something that was relatable, but it stood on some, some good principles, which are very close to my heart. So
Yeah. Okay. So it's been now 3 years. Because
I think a lot of people think that Lit started last year and it didn't. I
yeah,
think that was more so because I started doing more outside of talk therapy. I
yeah,
mean, my friends are not in the room when I'm doing that.
yeah,
So I started inviting people into Lit through other avenues and spaces. So um, just, I'm trying to think if I even want to get into that, but my personal experience very much is the reason why Lit is what it is. I graduated right. I walked across the stage in Tampa, actually,
hmm,
with my master's in social work. I celebrated. It was great. Um, Went on a trip with my brother, week long cruise. It was all. I literally left the day after my party. Came back. The world started shutting down.
yeah,
What is happening? So I knew I was like, I'm gonna be a therapist. I'm gonna get a job as a therapist. I'm eventually have my own business, whatever. I didn't know what the name of it was gonna be. It was just something that I just knew that I was gonna do. I'm like, all right, I'm graduated. I'm gonna do my internship, get my hours, get licensed. Cool. And then the world went to shit, literally.
yeah,
And so did mine. Like personally, like so much was going on. And I'm like, how am I supposed to show up for all these people? Everybody's now looking to me for answers, right? Like you're the professional, you're the expert, and I don't call myself an expert in anything. Actually, it was in a training um that I went to get licensed. Where like you don't really want to refer to yourself as an expert until you've been doing like this specific thing for like 10 years.
damn,
Nonetheless, like I was no expert in mental health. I know people, I
yeah,
know human beings, I know myself, and I know what I was experiencing. So, um, without having had that, there would be no Lit. Um, and so, through that, like having that experience of the world kind of being in the state that it was and all of these different major things going on
yeah,
top of the pandemic, mental health became like this word, like a catchphrase everybody uses.
yeah,
And this is why I saved your post. This is what it was, because you're like, it's like this thing that people say, and it's cool, it's lit. Like it's a lot more
yeah.
than what we're actually talking about. So um I think I got away from your initial question, but I'll just segue into what Lit's been doing.
Okay.
So I learned a lot about myself through going to therapy, and then having that awareness at when I'm talking to other people about their own stuff that they have going on. And I'm
Yeah,
learning about myself more because your clients teach you things about yourself too, because you see more of yourself now when you have this awareness. So, and then it shows up in your relationships with people. So then you have that aspect of it, and those relationships start to shift. So, but what I noticed, particularly in the last year, is that the changes that occurred over the last few years, people started recognizing and were
yeah,
providing me with feedback. And it was uncomfortable at first. I was like, well, what are you talking about? Sure, I don't know who you are right now. Like, but who is this? But I'm proud of you. I'm this and that. So I had to receive those compliments.
yeah,
I had a very dear friend of mine who's in the chat right now. She's like, when are you gonna like step into it? When are you gonna get to it? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm already. And
yeah.
then
I was gonna
I
say,
started doing these things, and I was like, oh, I am this person. Like, okay, cool.
I was gonna kind of say it earlier because when you were talking about like when Lit started, I was gonna say like I somewhat couldn't really be the credible source to say it in an accurate time because I've been hearing you talk about it for 3 years, and I'm like, but I know that the name, being on social media, being out, planning the network events, I'm like, that's like in the last year. So I've kind of watched you ideate and execute a lot of the ideas for this, but it's still it's new in the execution, not new in the ideation. But that also brought me something you said to me, something you just said, kind of created a question for me. With you obviously working with your patients, clients.
Sure.
That's the proper word.
You
Can I say clients?
Sure.
Okay, clients. That sounds.
It depends on the setting. So like,
Patient.
it's fine.
Okay, patient. People. With the people you see, right? How do you even? How do you draw the line between, like, you know how sometimes we share our own experiences to help create like a bridge of relativity between, like, oh look, like I empathize with you because I have my own experiences. Like, how hard is that to do in your profession? And if you all want to kind of answer in the chat as well, definitely want to see what your thoughts are. But like, how do you draw that line of, like, I want to be a human to the people that I see, but at the same time, like, I want to draw a line where I'm not sharing pieces of myself that even I haven't started working on yet. Like, what's that like?
First of all, it's a skill. It's not like, because I think it's natural for anyone to sit across from another person and be like, I've experienced that too.
Yeah.
This is why it's a skill, because oftentimes when we're talking to our friends, we insert ourselves based on something our friend said to us about their experience. Think about it.
I'm guilty of that.
Oh, yeah, like, and because this one time, it's a skill. It's not something that you click and it turns on. So I've had it many a times in sessions where I'm like thinking, I'm listening, I'm like doing both at the same time. I'm like listening to the client and thinking of, I'm having that moment of, okay, I've had a similar experience, but how do I share that in a way that's beneficial to them? It always, if it's not, if the intent isn't for their benefit, then I don't share it.
The intent is not to the benefit.
That's one. The other part is, like, I'm not just gonna go into sharing personal details about myself, not just with my clients, but with most people in general. Because I'm a private person. Like, this, it in itself is a lot for me to be able to do, because it requires you to be vulnerable. But to your point, like, how do you draw the line between, like, being human and, like, having that line of, like, this is my personal space that I'm not inviting you into. I think one of the easiest things for me to, the way that I kind of go about it is, like, when I talking about a feeling or emotion, it doesn't have to be an exact shared experience. All human beings, you've experienced anger.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you what made me angry. I know what anger feels like. Well, you know what anger feels like, or disappointment, or this. So I have some of my go-tos. One of my go-tos has been consistently, when I got put on academic probation during my grad program. It was disappointing. Not a lot of people know that.
Wow.
Yeah, I was placed on academic probation. I had to write an appeal to get back into school. All right. If I hadn't gone through that, then I wouldn't be in front of you right now. Right.
True.
That's an experience. That is me being, what's the word? I'm talking about resilience.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? The ability to bounce back from something. Like, that was a temporary moment in time. So, things like, that's kind of how I try to go about it.
Okay. And so I'm glad you went in that exact place. So recently, for everyone that's new here, I have been probably talking about the VividLife going on like 2 years now. It's been everywhere. VividLife apparels, my merch line, VividLife tour, events that I host and where I'll be at, just all of that. And so recently I've defined the Vivid Life as kind of 5 areas that I focus on, like people who have journey of purpose, right? Like being on that journey, I'm trying to figure out what your purpose is. And I'm glad you mentioned that last piece, because that eased right into that. That's the first pillar of the Vivid Life. And so with that journey and you overcoming obstacles, like how does that like prepare you to say, like, you know what, I know what my calling is, I know what my purpose is, like I know what the next big thing that I want to do. Like how did that exact moment of being on academic probation like line you up for, like you said, being here today and running a business called Living in Truth? not the glasses coming off. And I know it's funny because you keep saying I don't know if I want to be vulnerable, but I'm like, Charree, it's okay. You're gonna be a little vulnerable. It's okay.
Living in truth. I'll get into some things. I mean, so when I was on academic probation, I couldn't even remember what was going on at work. I was working at the sheriff's office. I was working in child protection. It's a job. Oh, it must be hard. It was difficult. It was a very difficult job to have, which is part of the reason why I was on academic probation, because I was trying to do too much. And I was trying to be too much to too many people, which put me in a really bad financial place. It affected a lot of my close relationships, friendships, close friends, relationships within my family, my partner at the time. There was just a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, when that happened, I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? Because then, like, what if I appeal and I don't get back in? And I do consider myself a spiritual person. I kind of fell back onto what I know, my faith. I was like, there's a reason why this is happening. I don't know exactly what it is. Looking back at it now, I think it was, you need to slow down and you need to think, right? You need to be a little bit more calculated about what you're doing. You need to create balance. You need to take care of yourself and your health, and because these things are deteriorating, and the calling that you're going into requires a lot of you. So if you don't figure this out now,
it'll figure it out for you.
Into it, you might fall. It might not work out the way that you might sink further. So I reached out to a couple of supports. I did not go to therapy yet, but eventually I got back into the program. I think I might have switched up my work schedule. I started listening to people who had been there before a little bit more. I took risks. I did things that I didn't necessarily want to do. I went into an internship that I think showed me a lot of, when I tell you my skills took off from there, and they probably already were, and I didn't recognize it at the time. But I remember doing my first group. I was sick in the room. My friend was like, I'm gonna be there right there with you. And I'm like, I don't care what you're, in my mom, I don't care what this girl's saying. She's like, but I already know, this is but that's how I learned. And and so that same concept, I just took that and applied it moving forward. So then I left the sheriff's office. I prepared for it though. Right. What I had to do when I was on academic probation, I had to put things in place. So I prepared for a year to leave the sheriff's office. I got to walk across the stage in Tampa. If I would have graduated when I was supposed to be in like Missouri or something. Who's gonna come to Missouri, right? You know. So my family was able to come to Tampa. It was an easy trip to make. My friends were here. It was easy to, that celebration was there. I had a lot of support.
Now remind me really quick what year we're talking about.
My degree was conferred November 2019.
Okay.
I walked. So I was in school online. I walked in January 2020. So between between the degree, me completing it, and when I walked, I went overseas for the first time to Egypt with some family and friends. Probably still to this day, one of the best trips I've ever taken.
Yeah.
It was lit. Okay. It was cool. We took a cruise down the Nile. It was dope. Actually, that was probably my last favorite New Year's. Because it was a whole part of food everywhere. Oh, it was great. But not to get off track, but yeah, so I took that same concept that my friend was like, we're just gonna throw you into the fire. So I left the sheriff's office, didn't have a job. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Got money saved though. It's gonna work out.
I remember this era now. I remember this era very, very well
this
now.
This is the era that a lot of people are like, okay, now this is when things really started to take off.
Yeah.
That was when I started renting. God. Listen, my mom was like, so, but you have a full time, you have benefits, you have retire. I was in the Florida retirement system at the time.
Yeah.
I invested for 8 years. It's fine. I still have that on top of some other things because I opened other, retirement savings accounts for out of that decision. My partner at the time was like, you need to figure something out because I'm gonna have to start paying your bills. I'm like, I got this.
So with a time like that, right? I mean, I have definitely had moments like that, right? Where it's just like, I kind of don't know where and when and how, but I know that it will, right? But there's still that factor of like fear, right? For you and for people who you typically work with and just in general, like how do you advise people? How do you direct people when it comes to overcoming fear, challenges, and setting their goals? Like what is your advice for overcoming like that huge obstacle of being fearful?
What happens if things don't change?
Yeah, we asked that question in sales. Like what happens if you do nothing? Like,
yeah. What if everything that you stays the same? Even though we know everything you're doing right now is like not working at all. It's not working. We know something has to change. So we're talking about being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. If we go back to what you were saying about, going into the new year with fall into the same patterns because we've been doing it for so long. There's comfort in, even though it doesn't necessarily feel good, it's just easier because I don't know what happens next when I do this thing. It's the fear of the unknown, but that's always going to be there.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, and I can imagine that you probably say that a lot when you're giving relationship advice, if you ever give relationship advice. So and I, it's crazy because like I said, we ask that question a lot in sales. Like if you do nothing right now, like what changes? What impact does having nothing? What impact does doing nothing have on the bigger picture? And I think that is a really good question to ask, especially when people do say, they're afraid to do something. This phrase right here that Charree dropped, do it afraid. I actually hate it. Like I actually hate the phrase "do it afraid." I hate the phrase "do it broke," because I think, you know me, I'm like very like into the grain of things. Like I always ask the question, how? Like, how does someone? Because fear is crazy. Like, being fearful changes how you look at reality, and it's like
Mhm.
it shapes your reality because you're fearful. So it's like, to do it afraid. Like, what does that mean, yo? Like, to the everyday person who has a creative project that they really want to do, but they're afraid to put themselves out there because they're afraid to get judged. Like, to say do it afraid is like, how do you
Those things
overcome
are gonna
that?
happen anyway.
True.
No, it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's called courage,
Yeah.
right? I'm not doing it because like I know it's gonna work out. I'm not because I don't know. Like I'm not doing it because I'm not afraid that something bad's gonna happen and I might not have all the facts. I'm doing it because I said there was something I wanted to do and there's something I wanted to accomplish. So if I don't make a decision, then it's never gonna work out
Yeah.
because I don't know what that I will never know what it looks like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Um,
I think because so do it afraid is like it's the simple way of saying
yeah.
everything that I just said. It's like you 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 choose. It's a choice to start being intentional about what it is you want to have a more fulfilling life.
Hmm.
If you're feeling unfulfilled, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you're in this stagnant place, you're not really sure which way is up or down, but you have all these thoughts, you have all of these ideas, things that you want to do, or like what's preventing you. Fear usually is at the top of that list.
Yeah, that's definitely at the top. Fear, maybe money, but
Mhm.
I feel like money is usually connected to fear because you're afraid of losing the money you're investing, or you're
Yeah.
afraid you don't have the money, or you're afraid you don't have the money to do it correctly, which is like, these are all things that I think about like in the last month, even for myself, right? Paul and I don't know if you heard on last episode, Paul and I were talking about like streaming as a concept. It's so crazy. It's like,
Mhm.
people are afraid to do these because the first 7 times, maybe the first 20 times you do it, you're talking to yourself. Like, no one cares, bro. Like, you know what I mean? And it's just like, I remember getting to a point where I was like, I know I want to do these stream things. I know I want to stream, but like,
What do people
I
care?
huh?
What do people care about?
What do people care about? And it's like, what do I care about to be able to talk to myself about for 90 minutes? And like, that was the hardest thing. And eventually I was like, if I know how to do anything, I just want to talk to people. Like, and it's like you said, it had to become intentional. You see how much behind the scenes kind of stuff is on this. Like,
It's
it's a
crazy.
lot. It's a lot of technical stuff, but also there was a lot of intentionality in like, all right, let me ask really tough questions, which is why when you messaged me and you were like, yo, these are some tough questions, I was like, good. Like, I'm that's a good thing. Um, because I want it to be intentional. I want people to feel like, yes, they're a fly on the wall listening to this conversation, but there's some form of insight that they can walk away with. I feel like the easy way, and I'm just using myself in this instance to just talking about my own experience with like overcoming not so much a fear of not so much a generalized fear, but actually something that I feel like a lot of people in their 30s are afraid of, which is the fear of being a rookie. Like, the fear of like having to learn something new and not being good at it, which is tough stuff.
So that's